Before we get started, I want to send a shout out to my friend Jem. This is a hat from her website. So Jem is a documentarian and she has this amazing series called I'm Still Standing. And that goes along with the theme for today. 2018, January 1st, started pretty rough. I lost my grandmother to old age, I guess you can say. You know, I believe she was 99 or 100, and she, her body and her health deteriorated over time. And I think a regret that me and my mom talk about is the fact that, New Year's Eve, we were at home. My mom was like, we should probably go to the retirement home and maybe spend it, count the year in with your grandmother. But then we had second thoughts, right? Then we kind of said, it's a retirement home. There's a lot of older people. They won't want a lot of ruckus and noise. So we decided to stay home. When the clock hit midnight, I went to a friend's house and that was that. My phone died. And so when I woke up and I plugged my phone in, I woke up to so many voicemails, text messages, missed calls with the news that my grandmother had passed away, which is really sensitive to me because I really loved my grandmother and she was such a staple in our family. And so when I learned she passed away, it was the start of a new beginning for me because it helped me realize a lot of things about myself and helped me, I guess, regain a sense of self and also start on this new journey to figuring out what's important, what doesn't matter, and what I actually want from my time here on this earth. 6 months later, fast forward to about a week ago, I learned that my aunt has died. She died from dementia and Alzheimer's and old age. And so that was pretty tough for my family. My grandmother lived in the same retirement home, so we were able to visit them often. And death in itself is just very tough, right? Especially when it's people that you love. I walked into the office today and I learned that one of my girlfriends died from stage 4 cancer. And as you can imagine, the office was so distraught. And when I learned about that, it automatically hit a trigger for me because my father is a cancer survivor. And so it just never feels normal. Death never feels normal. And I think every time someone in your life dies that you love, it just makes you hit the panic button, the reset button, makes you pick up the phone and call everyone that you love. And I cried. I think cried out. I cried so much this morning. Because not only was I triggered with anxiety, not only did I start thinking about my grandmother and my aunt, but I also started thinking about my father and the relationship I have with him, and I don't know what I'd ever do without him. So my father is a cancer survivor, but due to the radiation, he has experienced or is experiencing complications as a result. And so he has to take medication and he has to watch his diet and he has to exercise. And one of the reasons why I moved back home, right? If you guys remember, I can't remember what episode it was you remember when I moved into my own apartment and I was feeling good. And then I think we did another episode where I was crying my face off and I was moving back home. I moved back home for a lot of reasons. And one of those reasons is because I want to be closer to my parents. I want to, you guys are not inside our family discussions. You don't know what's going on. One of the reasons is I'm afraid to lose my father. And that literally kills me every single day. And I want to be closer to him. So that's one of the reasons why I'm here. My dad means a lot to me because throughout the trials and the poor decision making that I have created in my life, he's always been a constant. It kills me to think about not having him around because I don't know what I would do without him. He's one of the biggest inspirations in my life. Last year around November, you know, he quit his job and started his own business. And he's always been this impulsive decision maker, always been this badass, always, you know, once he comes up with an idea, it's straight to execution. There's no hesitation. There's no gray area. It's simply black or white. And so I'm just really, really proud of him. Some of you might be thinking, but what about your mom? My mom's a very strong woman, very, very strong. So I think it's not that I don't worry about her, but I do feel like she has just exhibited so much strength and resilience. And to my knowledge, she's always been healthy. So I just see her, I guess my assumption, I don't know if this is a poor assumption, is that she'll always be around. But my father, you know, watching him kind of go up and down in his health, that has really taken a toll on me. And I don't think a lot of family members understand that I cry at night about it. And I'm very, very sensitive about it. And behind closed doors, like, it's something that I struggle with a lot. With all of the death and the family get-togethers and the conversation and dialogue that has happened as a result of these circumstances, it's got me really thinking. I'm 30, and your 20s, I feel like, is when you allow yourself to fuck up. It's when you allow yourself to get messy. It's when you allow yourself to make mistakes. It's your time to just, like, to live, girl, right? But your 30s, I feel like, is no longer cute if you don't have certain things together. Mind you, I'm not saying that life has to be perfect at 30. I'm not saying that there's rules or parameters. There's just certain things that I think as an adult, I personally think that, like, I need to start thinking about and to start putting in motion. I think about health, right? I'm not just thinking about physical health, although that's very important. I'm also thinking about my emotional health, my mental health, my financial health. I recently went to the doctor, shout out to Dr. Vij, to get my PAP, my physical, my cultures, everything that I need to figure out, like, whether or not I have AIDS, STI, HPV, like, all of that stuff. You got to be really careful. I'm not going to pretend that I'm a virgin or anything. I'm not going to pretend that I'm Holy Mary, but I just feel like, you know, we're all out here dating and mating and hormonal. And I've asked guys that I've dated straight up, I've asked them, like, when was the last time you've been tested? Actually, the last guy that I dated, he's European, so fine. I asked him, like, when was the last time you've been tested? And he told me that he hadn't been tested ever. He told me that, you know, he was in a previous relationship of about 6 or 7 years, and that was his excuse. He's like, I was in a long-term relationship, so I didn't need to get tested. And that's scary to me. Like, that is, like, scary that someone could think that, like, it's okay just not to check their sexual health. So for me, I made sure, thumbs up, I'm good. But it's always very nerve-wracking, right? And of course, I'm sure people are thinking, well, don't put yourself in a situation where it has to be nerve-wracking. One of my best friends has genital herpes, and he is stuck with this STI for the rest of his life. It's pretty much ruined his life. And he's called me and he's cried. And I don't think he can die from it, but I do know that it's put an emotional, mental strain on his relationships, the one with himself and the one with his girlfriend. And so for me, when I think about adulting, when I think about my life, the span of my life, the quality of my life, when and if I will die, whatever that looks like, I just was recently triggered to get everything in check. So sexual health, physical health, good. So then my financial health, right? So I'm sitting with my financial advisors, talking to them about what my pockets look like, what my future looks like. And we get into those really, really tough conversations around life insurance, disability insurance, critical illness insurance. Of course, people naturally gravitate to home and auto, but like life, critical, and disability are things that some people typically don't get or think about because they either think they can't afford it, they think it's it's not important. They think they're young and they're gonna live long. Like, this shit is really serious. Like, you can't play. The afterlife, when I think about like when I die, or I have conversations with my parents around, you know, when and if they die, like, I would hope that these things are in place. Like, that's the last thing you want to think about when someone in your family passes away. And I was just texting my brother yesterday, and I actually started creating a folder, a Google Doc of all my policies, all of my, you know, a list of my beneficiaries, my banking account information, because this is serious shit. Something about experiencing a lot of death in my life and turning 30 has really like snapped me into getting my stuff together. And I hope that this is triggering something for you, that, you know, you need to start thinking about these things, because we're not going to be young forever. And the next thing I think is really important to talk about is mental health. Oh my God. Maintaining my sanity is an issue for sure. Thank God for my mentors. I think self-care is not always feeling pampered, going to the spa, getting your nails done. Mine are always done, by the way. But I feel like self-care is talking to my mentors, talking to my doctor about that. So my family doctor, he's Caucasian, he's famous. He was very instrumental in my recovery process and my, you know, just understanding, like, just very instrumental in my personal development since I was born. He got swept up in the Me Too movement. Someone accused him of, you know, something that he did 20 years ago. And now he's no longer in my life, which has been very, very hard for me to swallow. So now I see a new doctor who's a female, and she is helping me get things in order. Speaking of doctors and speaking of physical health, I actually forgot to mention the fact that I am 30 and thinking about having a baby. And when I say my physical health, I also need to make sure my doctor and I, my female doctor and I, have conversations around what that looks like for me, right? With or without a man, right? Obviously there's options. And so obviously my parents want me to get married and go through the steps, but I'm actually very open to IVF treatment. I'm actually very open to freezing my eggs. I'm very open to, if I get to a certain window where it's a critical period, I'm okay with having a baby by myself, right? But that's a whole other conversation. So let's talk about mental health. Mental health is important and very hard to maintain. I think every single day I go through this battle in my mind. I had this interview with one of my mentees. She was doing a video series, and she had asked me, her name is Chelsea, and she's amazing. And she had asked me a question that just triggered a lot of anxiety. She said, what is one thing that you wish people knew about you? Something along those lines. And I answered, and I told her that the one thing that I wish people understood about me, or the one thing that people probably don't realize or know about me, is the simple fact that every time you see me, every day that you see me, know that it's a blessing. Because I still struggle with suicidal thoughts. Like, I still struggle with this idea of self-worth. Like, there are days where I feel like Superwoman, and there are days where I feel like I can conquer the world. There are days where I am the shit, and I'm in the bathroom mirror and I'm just doing my thing. And then there are days where I literally can't get out of bed. There are days where I feel fat and ugly. There are days where I'm not the girl that everyone thinks I am. And so I'm constantly walking this fine line of, should I exist? Should I not exist? Is my existence important? Is it not important? Like, I'm constantly having these conversations with myself that are very hard to navigate. You guys know, in college, my second year, it was one of the hardest years of my life. I was drowning in depression and anxiety, and I tried to commit suicide twice. And so, like, since then, it's gotten better, right? It's gotten better, but only because I am actively creating a life worth living. And that takes a lot of effort for someone who struggles with anxiety and depression. But trust me, I would say at least a few days a week, like I get a voice inside my head that tells me to kill myself. And I don't want anyone to get alarmed. I don't want anyone to have pity over me, because I don't think, like, I'm not going to do anything stupid. I've created a life worth living. I've created relationships that mean the world to me. I'm in a much, much healthier space than I was in 2008, but the struggle is still there. Absolutely. The struggle is still there. The conversations are still there. And my doctor once said, like, I think someone with depression, anxiety doesn't or won't necessarily be like 100% cured. You just learn how to better navigate these conversations or voices inside your head, and you learn how to better navigate life's biggest challenges. But also too, my girls, the mentees at New Girl on the Block, which is my mentorship program, they give me reason to live. They give me reason to take another breath. They give me reason to take another step. Like, I can't even imagine like how 100+ mentees would feel if I did something stupid enough to hurt them that way. Because I know they trust me, and I know they love me, and I know they look up to me. And I think that would be very irresponsible of me and selfish of me to make a decision that would negatively impact so many people. So I really try and keep that in mind day to day in every single action, because I just think it just wouldn't be good. Physical health, sexual health, financial health, mental health. I think that it's all encompassing. And as I head into my 30s, I'm just really trying to have a deeper understanding of who I am. And I don't think that this journey is ever going to end. It's just a conversation that will continue. And I'm just consciously finding new ways to figure out the answers to some of life's biggest questions. One thing that I didn't mention that's probably the most important is my spiritual health. So my spiritual health is important because when no one else was believing in me or down for me, God has always had my back. Like, even during times where I thought God forgot about me and I questioned his decisions and I was hurting and down and out, in his time, he made it very evident that he had my back and always had my back and never ever went anywhere. And one thing that I try to keep in mind is that God is not obligated to tell you any of the answers when you want them, right? He's not obligated to tell you the fine details or the fine print. Things happen that are unfortunate, but I think that in the end, he finds a way to work it out for the better. There's so many questions that I have sometimes. Why did this person die? Or why did I not get this opportunity? Or, you know, I question my confidence or my self-worth. And I know that behind the scenes, he's trying to work it out. And that's actually one of the biggest lessons that I learned recently. You guys know, I guess from watching my social media, that I recently partnered with one of my business partners, Angelou, who you saw in episode 1 of season 2. I wrote the book with him. So we recently partnered to produce this huge conference in DC, 1,200 millennials, and our keynote speaker was Yvonne Orji from Insecure. One of the things that she said that stood out to me that I will never, ever, ever forget is that God is working behind the scenes on your behalf. That's so gold to me, because sometimes you can pretty much go insane trying to figure things out. But when I keep in mind that God's working behind the scenes and that he's not obligated to tell me anything and that success will happen in his time, it makes me feel a little bit better. Another thing that makes me feel better as I go through this roller coaster of defining womanhood, who I am, figuring out like how I feel about certain things, what I stand for, my values, my morals, all of that stuff. Another thing that helps me is a quote that I learned by Maya Angelou. So, you know, I have a few opportunities coming up that are very scary. I have a few relationships and friendships that I'm either deciding to sever or build or rebuild in some cases. And with every decision that I make, every stage that I stand on, any conversation that I have, I remember a quote that Maya Angelou taught me, and she says, "I stand as one, but I come as 10,000." And how I interpret that is that those 10,000 women standing behind me, helping me navigate my own womanhood and who I am, include my ancestors, include my friend who just died, it includes my auntie, it includes my grandmother, it includes all the women that came before me to even make these opportunities possible. A lot of the shit that we complain about is nothing in comparison to what our mothers, our grandmothers, and our great grandmothers have had to endure. So like, on one hand, I can feel empathetic for someone who's really going through some shit. And on another hand, I want to say, yo, we need to shut the fuck up and boss up. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I read this quote somewhere, probably on Instagram, that said, allow yourself to cry for 5 minutes and then you got to be gangsta. And that's not to discredit you from being emotional or taking that day to stay in bed. But I really do feel like everything is figure outable. And if we take the time, and if we make the effort to take that next step forward, there are more good things coming down the road, but we have to be optimistic and we have to open ourselves up to receiving them. And I think we often go through this metamorphosis thinking that we have to do this alone, or we feel lonely, but the reality is that we're not alone, right? Because like God's always with us. I mean, sometimes we want a guy or a warm body. Sometimes we want a girlfriend. But at the end of the day, like God's always with us. And I think that, you know, I grew up in church, right? Like I'm a PK. But I do feel like I need to do a better job of my end of the bargain. I haven't been going to church like I used to. I haven't been talking to God like I used to. And honestly, watching Yvonne Orji, I've been blessed enough to watch her speak a few times, and her relationship with God and her, you know, her level of spirituality has just been so mind blown. And the thing is, I know what God can do in my life. I know how powerful he is, but yet I still mess around and I still doubt his decisions. And I think that moving forward, I'm going to try and make a better effort. It's funny. One time I went to a 7-Eleven. And I was about to pay for my gas, and I put the money on the counter, and the cashier, whom I assume was Muslim, he was praying. And I looked around, and no one else was in the store, it was just me and him. And I don't know much about Muslim culture. I don't know much about it, but from my observation and from seeing men just literally like stop everything, take a corner, kneel down and pray, I assume there's certain points of the day where they have to express gratitude. I don't know that for a fact, so don't crucify me in the comments. But he was praying at the cash, and I waited for him to finish out of respect for him. And when he was done, he said, "Thank you, miss." And he proceeded with the transaction. And I walked out feeling reminded of, like, I thought that was just really, really awesome. I thought that was so cool that, like, no matter what, no matter where, no matter who was in his presence, he was going to commit to expressing gratitude to his God. And whoever you praise, whoever you thank, that's on you, right? Everyone believes in something different, but like that was really inspiring to me. Between Yvonne, between the man in the 7-Eleven, and between the circumstances that have happened in my life, I think I'm turning a new corner. I really do think that I have gone through some shit, but I really do think that there's really, really good things on the horizon. And so this is just my encouragement to you, right? Behind closed doors, we all fight our own private battles, but I promise you, the next step is always worth taking. and there is life after disappointment.